On Christmas morning, my daughter handed me a one-way ticket to a nursing home. I smiled, thanked her, and handed her back a deed to the house she thought she owned. By New Year's Day, she was the one packing her bags. You won't believe what happened next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening from in the comments. I should have seen it coming when Sarah started bringing up senior living communities every time I forgot where I put my reading glasses. But nothing could have prepared me for Christmas morning 2023, when my own daughter tried to ship me off like an unwanted Christmas present that couldn't be returned. My name is Robert Chen, and at 72, I thought I'd earned the right to live in my own home without my daughter treating me like a burden. For 30 years, I'd built a successful accounting practice in Portland, Oregon. I'd put Sarah through Stanford, paid for her wedding, and helped her and her husband David buy their first house. After my wife Linda passed away 5 years ago, I thought Sarah and I had grown closer. I was wrong. The morning started like any other Christmas. I was up early, making coffee in the kitchen of the Victorian house Linda and I had bought 40 years ago. The tree was lit up in the living room, presents underneath wrapped in the same red and gold paper Linda always used. I'd kept that tradition going, even though it was just Sarah, David, and their 2 kids coming over. Sarah arrived at 9 sharp with her perfect family in tow. David carried a large gift bag that seemed heavier than usual. The kids, Emma and Jake, were polite but distant, the way kids are when their parents have been telling them Grandpa might be getting sick. We opened presents in the usual order. The kids went first, tearing through remote control cars and art supplies I'd picked out weeks earlier. David got the golf accessories he'd been wanting. Sarah opened the jewelry box I'd found at an estate sale, the one that reminded me of her mother's. Then Sarah handed me a wrapped envelope. "Dad, this is from all of us. We put a lot of thought into this." Inside was a brochure for Sunset Manor Senior Living Community, along with what looked like admission paperwork already filled out. Attached was a one-way plane ticket to Phoenix, Arizona, dated January 15th. "What is this?" I asked, though I already knew. Sarah sat down next to me, using the voice she probably used with difficult clients at her law firm. "Dad, we've been talking, and we think it's time you considered moving somewhere with more support, somewhere you'd have people around all the time." "I have people around," I said quietly. "I have you." David cleared his throat. "Mr. Chen, we know this is hard, but Sarah's been worried sick about you living alone in this big house. What if you fall? What if something happens and no one finds you for days?" I looked at my granddaughter Emma, who was only 12 but smart enough to understand what was happening. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "This place in Phoenix is beautiful," Sarah continued, pulling out glossy photos. "They have activities, meals provided, medical staff on site 24/7, and the best part is, you'd be near Aunt Margaret." Margaret was Linda's sister, who I talked to maybe twice a year. We'd never been close. "What about my house?" I asked. Sarah and David exchanged a look. "Well, that's the other thing we wanted to discuss. David's been laid off and we're having some financial difficulties. We thought maybe we could move in here temporarily, just until we get back on our feet. Someone should be living in the house anyway, keeping an eye on things." The room felt like it was spinning. My daughter was literally handing me a one-way ticket out of my own life, and her husband was already planning to move into my home. "I built this practice for 30 years, I said slowly. "I have clients who depend on me. I have friends here. This is my home." "Dad, you're 72, Sarah said, and there was an edge to her voice now. "When was the last time you took on a new client? Most of your old ones have probably moved on anyway. It's time to retire and let us handle the practical stuff." "The practical stuff," I repeated. "You mean my life." "We're trying to help you," David said. "This way you'll have professional care and we'll make sure the house is maintained properly. It's a win-win situation." I looked around the living room where Linda and I had hosted 30 Christmases, where Sarah had opened her acceptance letter to Stanford, where we'd celebrated her wedding engagement, where I'd held Emma and Jake when they were babies. "I need some time to think about this," I said. Sarah's lawyer voice came out in full force. "Dad, the admission date is already set. We've put down a deposit. Margaret is expecting you. We really need an answer today." That's when I realized this wasn't a suggestion or a family discussion. This was a decision that had already been made without me. I was just being informed. I stood up slowly, feeling every one of my 72 years. I'm going to make more coffee. Anyone want some? Nobody did. They were all too busy avoiding eye contact. In my kitchen, I stared at the brochure for Sunset Manor. The photos showed elderly people sitting in wheelchairs, playing bingo, eating pureed food. These weren't people living their lives. They were people waiting to die. I thought about the conversation I'd overheard 3 weeks ago when Sarah thought I was napping in my study. She'd been on the phone with David, talking about my situation. He's becoming a liability, she'd said. What if he falls and we get sued? What if he forgets to turn off the stove and burns the neighborhood down? We need to act before something happens that we can't control. David had agreed. And honestly, Sarah, we could really use the equity in that house. Do you know what Victorian houses in that neighborhood are going for now? We could sell it and clear all our debts, maybe even buy something bigger. At the time, I'd told myself I'd misunderstood, that my daughter wouldn't talk about me like I was a problem to be solved. But here we were on Christmas morning, and she was literally handing me my eviction notice wrapped in pretty paper. The truth was, I'd been supporting Sarah and David financially for the past 3 years, ever since David's consulting business started struggling. When Emma needed braces, I paid the $4,000 orthodontist bill. When their air conditioning broke last summer, I covered the $3,500 replacement. When David's car was repossessed, I co-signed on a new loan and made the first 6 payments. Just last month, I'd transferred $8,000 to help with their mortgage payment when David's biggest client delayed payment. Sarah had promised they'd pay me back as soon as things turned around. Now I was beginning to understand that things would never turn around. They'd just found a more permanent solution to their money problems. I walked back to the living room with my coffee, noting how David was already measuring the walls with his eyes, probably planning where to put their oversized sectional sofa. "Dad," Sarah said when she saw me, "we really need to know what you're thinking. There are arrangements to finalize." "What happens to my accounting practice?" I asked. "We'll help you transition your clients to other firms," David said. "Most of them probably need younger accountants anyway, people who understand modern software and digital filing. I'd been doing taxes and bookkeeping for some of these families for 20 years. Mrs. Patterson had been bringing me her restaurant's books since 1985. The Johnsons trusted me with their small construction company's finances. These weren't just clients. They were relationships built over decades. What about my car? "You won't need a car in Phoenix," Sarah said. "The facility provides transportation to shopping and medical appointments." "What about my things? Linda's things?" Sarah waved her hand dismissively. "We'll help you pack the essentials. Everything else can be sold or donated. You can't take furniture to a senior living facility anyway." Everything else. 40 years of marriage, 30 years of building a business, a lifetime of memories, all reduced to everything else that could be sold or donated. Emma, my granddaughter, finally spoke up. "What about Grandpa's workshop in the garage? He's teaching me how to use the tools." Sarah shot her daughter a warning look. "Emma, Grandpa won't need a workshop anymore. He'll have new activities in Phoenix." "Like what?" I asked. David consulted the brochure. "Arts and crafts, movie nights, bingo games. They have a really comprehensive activities program. Arts and crafts. At 72, after running a successful business and raising a family, my daughter thought I'd be fulfilled making potholders and watching movies I'd already seen 50 times. "The facility looks very nice," I said carefully, "but I'm not ready to leave Portland. This is my home." Sarah's patience was wearing thin. "Dad, this isn't really about what you want anymore. This is about what's best for everyone. We can't keep worrying about you living alone, and frankly, we can't keep subsidizing 2 households. Subsidizing. As if the money I'd given them hadn't been gifts from a father trying to help his struggling daughter. As if I owed them something for the privilege of being their parent. "What if I said no?" I asked. The question hung in the air like smoke. David shifted uncomfortably. Sarah's jaw tightened. "Dad, that would be really selfish," she said finally. "We're trying to do what's right for the whole family." "The whole family," I repeated. "And what's right for the whole family is getting rid of me and taking my house." That's not what this is about, Sarah snapped, but her voice had gone up an octave. This is about making sure you're safe and cared for. I am safe. I am cared for. I'm living in the house I bought with my wife, running the business I built, in the city where I have friends and a life. Dad, you're being impossible, Sarah said, standing up. We've put a lot of work into arranging this. We've made commitments. That's when I understood. This wasn't about my safety or my well-being. This was about commitments they'd made, to Sunset Manor, to themselves, to the fantasy of living mortgage-free in my house while I rotted away in Arizona. I looked at my son-in-law, who was supposed to be the man who loved my daughter enough to build a life with her. Instead, he was a failed consultant who saw his elderly father-in-law as an ATM machine and a real estate opportunity. I looked at my granddaughter Emma, who was watching this conversation with the dawning realization that adults could be cruel to each other, even family members. I looked at my daughter Sarah, who I'd raised to be strong and independent, who'd apparently learned that strength meant bulldozing over anyone who stood between her and what she wanted, and I made a decision that would change all of our lives forever. You know what? I said, setting down my coffee cup. You're absolutely right. This is about what's best for the whole family. Sarah's face lit up with relief. Oh, Dad, I'm so glad you understand. I know this is hard, but... I held up my hand. Let me finish. This is about what's best for the whole family, which is why I need to tell you something important about this house. David leaned forward, probably mentally calculating renovation costs. Sarah, do you remember when you and David were looking for your first house 10 years ago? You found that perfect little place in southeast Portland, but you couldn't qualify for the loan because David's credit score was too low? Sarah nodded slowly. Yeah, but what does that have to do with... And do you remember how I helped you qualify by co-signing the loan and putting down the 20% deposit? Of course, Dad. We've always been grateful for that. Grateful enough to pay me back the $47,000 I fronted for your down payment? The room went quiet. David's face was starting to change color. Dad, we've been over this, Sarah said carefully. When business picks up, we'll start making payments. We just need a little more time. Time, I repeated. Like the time I gave you when David's business started failing 2 years ago, and I took over your mortgage payments for 6 months. David was staring at the floor now. Emma was looking back and forth between the adults, trying to understand why the mood had shifted so dramatically. Or the time I helped with Emma's orthodontist bills, Jake's soccer equipment, your car repairs, David's business loan payments, your property taxes last year, and the $8,000 I transferred to your account 3 weeks ago to keep you from defaulting on your mortgage. Sarah's lawyer training was kicking in. Dad, those were gifts. You never said they were loans. Gifts, I said. Gifts from a father to his daughter who was struggling. Gifts that apparently gave you the right to treat me like a burden you needed to dispose of. I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. Would you like to know how much I've gifted you over the past 3 years, Sarah? Dad, this isn't... $127,000, I said clearly. $127,000. That's not counting the original down payment on your house, which brings the total to $174,000. David looked like he was going to be sick. Sarah's face had gone pale. For context, I continued, that's more than most people make in 3 years. It's more than I paid for this house when your mother and I bought it in 1983. Emma was staring at me with wide eyes. Jake was fidgeting with his new toy car, oblivious to the tension. But apparently, $174,000 in financial support over the years doesn't buy me the right to live in my own home. It doesn't buy me the right to make my own decisions about my life. It just makes me a problem that needs to be managed. Sarah found her voice. Dad, we never asked you for that money. You're right, I said. You never asked. You just created situations where I felt like I had to help, then acted like it was my obligation as your father. David loses a client, suddenly there's a crisis only Dad can solve. The orthodontist wants payment, somehow it becomes Dad's responsibility. Your mortgage payment is late, and guess who gets the emergency phone call? I stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the neighborhood I'd lived in for 40 years. Mrs. Patterson was walking her dog. The Johnsons were loading their grandkids into their car for Christmas dinner. Normal families having normal holidays. You want to know what's really sad about this? I said without turning around. I would have helped you anyway. If you'd come to me and said, Dad, we're struggling financially and we're worried about your safety living alone. Can we work something out? I would have listened. We could have talked about options. We could have found a solution that worked for everyone. I turned back to face them. But instead, you decided to treat me like a senile old man who couldn't be trusted to make his own decisions. You made plans behind my back, spent my money, and then presented me with a fait accompli on Christmas morning. Sarah's lawyer instincts were kicking in, looking for an angle to regain control. Dad, we can discuss the financial arrangements later. The important thing right now is your safety and... My safety, I interrupted. Let's talk about my safety. I'm 72 years old. I work out 3 times a week at the community center. I still drive, I still work, I still live independently. I have friends, hobbies, and a life I enjoy. The only danger to my safety is my own daughter trying to ship me off to Arizona against my will. David finally spoke up. Mr. Chen, we're just trying to plan for the future. What happens when you really can't live alone anymore? When that day comes, if it comes, then we'll deal with it as a family. But that day isn't today, and it sure as hell isn't going to be decided by 2 people who owe me $174,000 and want to move into my house. The truth was hitting them now. Sarah was realizing that her carefully laid plans might not work out the way she'd imagined. David was probably calculating how they'd make their mortgage payment next month without Dad's help. Here's what's going to happen, I said, sitting back down. I'm going to keep living in my house, running my business, and making my own decisions about my life. And you 2 are going to figure out how to be financially independent adults without using your elderly father as a piggy bank. Sarah's voice got sharp. Dad, that's not fair. We have commitments, obligations. We can't just what? Can't just live within your means like every other married couple in America? Can't just take responsibility for the financial decisions you've made? We never expected to have to support ourselves completely right now, David said. We thought we had more time. More time to what? More time to bleed me dry while planning to dump me in a nursing home? More time to spend money you hadn't earned on a lifestyle you couldn't afford? I could see Sarah getting angry now, the way she used to when she was a teenager and didn't get her way. Dad, we've sacrificed a lot to help you too. Do you think it's easy worrying about you all the time? Do you think we don't have our own lives to live? Worrying about me, I said. Is that what you call planning to put me in a nursing home so you can take my house? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been worrying about yourselves. The mask was coming off now. Sarah stood up, her face flushed. Fine. You want to know the truth? Yes, we need this house. Yes, we're struggling financially. Yes, we thought this would solve both problems at once. But that doesn't mean we don't care about you. It just means you care about yourselves more. David tried to play peacemaker. Mr. Chen, maybe we got ahead of ourselves. Maybe we can work out a different arrangement. What kind of arrangement? I asked. Sarah and David looked at each other. I could practically see the wheels turning. Well, Sarah said slowly, maybe you could deed the house to us now, and we could all live here together. That way you wouldn't have to move, and we could take care of the property maintenance and expenses. There it was, the real plan. They wanted me to sign over my house, live in it at their sufferance, and probably pay them rent for the privilege. Let me see if I understand this correctly, I said. You want me to give you my house, so you can live in it rent-free while I continue to live here as your tenant. That's not how we'd think of it, David said quickly. How would you think of it? Sarah was getting frustrated. Dad, we're trying to find a solution that works for everyone. We have kids to think about, a future to plan for. We can't just keep struggling financially while you sit on all this equity that you're never going to use. Equity that I'm never going to use, I repeated. You mean the equity in the house that I worked 30 years to pay for, in the business that I built, in the life that I created? Dad, be realistic. You're 72. How many more years are you really going to need this big house? How many more years are you going to work? At some point, you're going to need care, and when that happens, this house will have to be sold anyway to pay for it. She was talking about my death. My daughter was making financial plans based on my death. The room felt very quiet suddenly. Even Jake had stopped playing with his toy and was looking at the adults with confusion. Emma, who had been silent through most of this conversation, finally spoke up. "Grandpa, are you really going to Arizona?" I looked at my granddaughter, this sweet 12-year-old who was watching her mother try to dispose of her grandfather like an unwanted piece of furniture. "No, sweetheart," I said. "Grandpa's not going anywhere." And that's when Sarah made the mistake that would change everything. Sarah's face went from frustrated to furious in about 3 seconds. She stood up and pointed her finger at me like she was cross-examining a hostile witness. "Dad, stop filling her head with false hope. You're being completely unreasonable, and you're making this harder on everyone, especially the kids." "I'm making this harder?" I asked. "Yes. We've spent weeks planning this transition. We've put down deposits, made arrangements, coordinated with Aunt Margaret. We've told the kids you were moving. And now you're backing out because what? Because your feelings are hurt?" David put his hand on Sarah's arm. "Honey, maybe we should—" Sarah shook him off. "No, David. Someone needs to tell him the truth. Dad, you're being selfish. We're trying to do what's best for everyone, and you're only thinking about yourself." "What's best for everyone?" I repeated slowly. "Yes. What's best for your granddaughter, who shouldn't have to worry about her grandfather falling down the stairs? What's best for your grandson, who shouldn't have to see his grandfather getting confused and forgetful? What's best for us, who shouldn't have to constantly worry about you while we're trying to raise our own family?" Emma started to cry quietly. Jake looked scared. That's when Sarah said the words that ended our relationship forever. "And honestly, Dad, what's best for you too? Because you're not as sharp as you used to be. You forget things, you repeat stories, you move slowly. You're becoming exactly the kind of old man who needs professional care, whether you want to admit it or not." The room went dead silent, except for Emma's sniffling. I looked at my daughter, this person I'd raised, educated, and supported for 39 years, and I saw a stranger. Someone who could look at her own father and see only a problem to be solved, a burden to be managed, an obstacle to her financial security. "Sarah," I said very quietly, "I want you to listen to me very carefully." Something in my voice made everyone stop moving. "I have made exactly one mistake in this entire conversation. Do you know what it was?" She didn't answer. "My mistake was thinking that the daughter I raised would never treat her father the way you've treated me today. I thought I'd raised someone with character, with loyalty, with basic human decency. I was wrong." Sarah's anger was starting to crack. "Dad, I'm not finished. You want to talk about what's best for everyone? Let's talk about what's best for everyone. What's best for Emma and Jake is learning that families take care of each other, not discard each other when they become inconvenient. What's best for you and David is learning to live within your means, instead of depending on handouts from the man you're trying to put in a nursing home." I stood up and walked to my desk in the corner of the living room. In the bottom drawer, I kept important documents in a fireproof box. I pulled out a manila folder and set it on the coffee table. "And what's best for me," I continued, "is making sure I never again trust someone who would look me in the eye on Christmas morning and tell me I'm not sharp enough to make my own decisions." I opened the folder and pulled out several documents. Sarah and David were staring at the papers like they might explode. "Do you know what these are?" I asked. "Dad, what are you doing?" Sarah's voice had gotten very small. "These are the papers you'll need to understand your new financial situation." I spread them out on the coffee table, bank statements showing the transfers I'd made to their account over the past 3 years, the co-signed loan documents for their house, the promissory notes I'd made them sign when I loaned them money, notes they'd apparently forgotten about. "You see, Sarah, when you co-sign a loan, you don't just become responsible for it if the other person defaults. You also have rights. The right to know about late payments, the right to demand full payment if the terms are violated, the right to protect your own credit by taking action." David's face was white. "Mr. Chen, what are you saying?" "I'm saying that as of this morning, I'm calling in all outstanding loans, every promissory note, every co-signed obligation, every penny I've gifted you over the years with the understanding that it would be paid back when you got on your feet." I pulled out my calculator and started adding. "Let's see. Outstanding balance on loans I've made to you directly, $47,000. Money I've paid on your behalf over the past 3 years. $127,000. That's $174,000, plus 3% annual interest compounded monthly. Sarah found her voice. Dad, you can't do this. Those were gifts. We don't have that kind of money. Gifts, I said. Like the gift you gave me this morning? The gift of a one-way ticket to Arizona and a nursing home I never asked for? I pulled out one more document. But here's the interesting thing about your house, Sarah. Since I co-signed the loan and provided the down payment, I have certain legal rights. And since you're now in default on the personal loans I've made to you, I have the right to exercise those rights. David was starting to panic. What rights? What are you talking about? I handed him a document. I'm talking about the fact that your house isn't actually your house. Sarah grabbed the paper. Her face went through several different colors as she read it. This can't be legal, she whispered. It's completely legal. When I co-signed your mortgage and provided the down payment, my lawyer suggested I protect my investment by having myself added to the deed as a joint owner. You signed the papers. You just never bothered to read them carefully. The truth was sinking in. The house they'd been planning to take from me actually belonged to me. 51% ownership, I continued, which means I have controlling interest in all decisions regarding the property, including who gets to live in it. Emma had stopped crying and was listening with the intensity of a kid watching a really interesting movie. Jake was still confused but could tell something big was happening. Here's what's going to happen, I said, sitting back down. You have 30 days to make arrangements for alternative housing. I'll be moving into the house you thought was yours, since it's actually mine, and I'll be living there rent-free since I own it. Sarah stood up so fast she knocked over her coffee cup. You can't kick us out of our home. It's not your home, I said calmly. It's my home. Just like this house is my home, and just like my life is my life, not yours to manage. David was frantically reading the deed document. There has to be some way to contest this. We've been paying the mortgage for 10 years. With my help, I reminded him. And according to the loan terms, if you default on any associated debts, like the personal loans I've made to you, the cosigner has the right to assume full control of the property to protect their interests. I pulled out one final paper. This is a formal demand for payment. You have 30 days to pay the full amount owed, or I'll be forced to take possession of the collateral. Sarah was reading over David's shoulder, her face getting more desperate by the second. Dad, this is crazy. You can't destroy our family over hurt feelings. I'm not destroying anything, I said. I'm just refusing to be destroyed myself. You made your choice when you decided I was a problem to be solved instead of a father to be respected. Now I'm making mine. Emma looked up from her tears. Grandpa, what's going to happen to us? I knelt down next to my granddaughter and took her hands. Sweetheart, your parents are going to figure out how to take care of their family without taking advantage of other people. And maybe they'll learn that people who love you don't try to get rid of you when you become inconvenient. Sarah was shaking now. Whether from anger or fear, I couldn't tell. Dad, please, we can work this out. We can find another way. Another way to what? Another way to use me until I'm no longer useful? Another way to spend my money while planning to dump me in a nursing home? I stood up and looked at all of them. My daughter, my son-in-law, my grandchildren. I gave you everything I had to give. My money, my time, my love, my trust. And you tried to pay me back by stealing my independence and my dignity. David made one last, desperate attempt. Mr. Chen, we can pay you back. It'll take time, but we can work out a payment plan. With what money? I asked. You couldn't make your mortgage payment without my help last month. You haven't had a steady client in 6 months. Your grand plan was to take my house and put me in a nursing home. What exactly has changed that makes you think you can suddenly pay me back $174,000? The silence stretched out until Emma spoke up again. Mom, why did you try to send Grandpa away? Sarah knelt down next to her daughter, tears starting to flow. Honey, we thought it would be better for everyone. Better how? Sarah couldn't answer. How do you explain to a 12-year-old that you tried to get rid of her grandfather so you could steal his house? That's when I knew I'd won. Not because I'd outmaneuvered them legally or financially, but because my granddaughter understood what her parents had tried to do, and she knew it was wrong. Pack your things, I said quietly. You have until January 15th, the same date on that plane ticket to Phoenix. Poetic justice, don't you think? The days after Christmas were the quietest my house had been in years. Sarah and David took the kids home in silence, and I didn't hear from them for 3 days. No angry phone calls, no attempts at negotiation, no lawyers threatening to challenge my legal right to the property. Just silence. On December 28th, I drove over to their house, my house, to check on things. Sarah's car was in the driveway, but the curtains were drawn. I could see boxes stacked by the front window. They were actually packing. That afternoon, my phone finally rang. Sarah's number. "Dad," she said, and her voice sounded like she'd been crying. "We need to talk." "I'm listening." "David's been on the phone with lawyers all week. They all say the same thing. The documents are legal. Your ownership is clear. We don't have grounds to challenge it." "I know. Dad, we have nowhere to go. We can't afford first month's rent and a security deposit on a new place. Our credit is shot because of the missed payments. No one will rent to us." I let that sit for a moment. "What about David's family?" "They don't have room for all of us. And honestly, they're pretty upset about the whole situation. They think we brought this on ourselves." "Did you?" Long pause. "I don't know anymore." "Sarah, let me ask you something. When you were planning to send me to Phoenix, did you ever once consider where I would go if I said no? Did you have a backup plan that didn't involve taking my house?" We thought you'd understand that it was for the best." "For the best for who?" Another pause. "For us. We thought it was for the best for us." At least she was being honest now. "Here's what I don't understand," I said. "Why didn't you just ask me to help you? If you were struggling financially, if you were worried about my living alone, why didn't you come to me and say, 'Dad, we need to figure something out together'?" Sarah was quiet for so long I thought the call had dropped. "Because," she said finally, "we were embarrassed. David's business was failing, and we were behind on everything, and it felt like we were already taking too much from you. We thought if we could just solve both problems at once. You thought you could get rid of me and take my house, and then you wouldn't have to feel guilty about taking my money anymore. That's not how we thought about it." "How did you think about it?" "We thought we were taking care of you. By forcing me into a nursing home against my will. By making sure you were safe and cared for while we preserved the family assets." Family assets. My house had become a family asset that they were preserving by stealing it from me. "Sarah, I'm going to tell you something that might help you understand why this went so wrong. When your mother was dying, do you know what her biggest fear was? The pain? Number. Her biggest fear was that after she was gone, you'd see me as a burden instead of your father. She made me promise that I wouldn't let you take care of me out of obligation. She wanted me to stay independent as long as possible so that when you and I spent time together, it would be because we wanted to, not because you had to." I could hear Sarah crying now. "Your mother would be ashamed of what you tried to do to me. Not because you were worried about my safety, but because you tried to take away my choice. You tried to make decisions about my life without including me in them. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We messed up. We messed up everything." "Yes, you did. Is there any way we can fix this?" I looked around my house, at the rooms where Linda and I had built our life together, where Sarah had grown up, where I'd planned to live until I died. "I don't know," I said honestly. "You broke something that might not be fixable." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I don't trust you anymore. I don't trust that you see me as your father instead of as a problem to be managed. I don't trust that you won't try this again the next time I forget where I put my keys or take too long to answer the phone. We wouldn't. You would. Because in your mind, you were doing the right thing. You convinced yourselves that forcing me out of my home was an act of love. What happens the next time you decide you know what's best for me? Sarah was sobbing now. Dad, please. We learned our lesson. We know we were wrong. Did you? Or are you just sorry because it didn't work out the way you planned? She couldn't answer that. Here's what's going to happen, I said. You have until January 15th to find somewhere else to live. I'll give you the security deposit for a rental if you find something reasonable. But the house is mine, and I'm moving into it. Why that house? Why not just stay where you are? Because that house represents 10 years of my money, my co-signature, my financial support. And because every time I drive past it, I want to remember that actions have consequences. What about the kids? What about Emma and Jake? That was the hardest part. I loved my grandchildren, but their parents had put them in this situation, not me. The kids can visit me anytime they want. They can even stay overnight. But they'll be visiting me in my house, not living in it while their parents plan my exile. Dad, David's been applying for jobs everywhere. We're trying to get back on our feet. Good. You should have been doing that 3 years ago instead of using me as your personal bank. The call ended with Sarah promising to have their things out by the deadline. I hung up feeling no satisfaction, just a deep sadness for what my family had become. Over the next 2 weeks, I started preparing for my move. I hired a cleaning service to get their house ready. I arranged for my mail to be forwarded. I contacted my clients to let them know I was changing offices to a home-based setup. On January 10th, Mrs. Patterson called me. She'd heard through the neighborhood grapevine that something was happening with my family. Robert, is everything all right? I heard Sarah and David are moving. It's complicated, Helen. Is it true you're moving into their house? I explained the situation as diplomatically as I could. Mrs. Patterson listened without interrupting. Good for you, she said when I finished. What? Good for you for standing up for yourself. I've watched too many of my friends get railroaded by their children. Kids who suddenly decide their parents can't make decisions anymore. Kids who think they know better about everything. I feel terrible about the grandchildren. The grandchildren will be fine. Better to learn now that there are consequences for treating people badly than to learn it later when the stakes are higher. On January 14th, I drove past their house to see how the packing was going. The moving truck was there and David was loading boxes. He saw me and walked over to my car. Mr. Chen, I want you to know that I take full responsibility for this situation. Do you? I do. Sarah was just trying to protect you, but I pushed for the financial aspects. I saw an opportunity to solve our money problems, and I convinced her it was the right thing to do. Why are you telling me this? Because Sarah's been blaming herself for everything, and it's not fair. I'm the one who suggested taking over your house. I'm the one who researched the nursing home. I'm the one who convinced her you'd be better off there. I looked at this man who'd married my daughter, who I'd welcomed into my family, who I'd supported financially for years. David, can I ask you something? Sure. Did you ever like me? Or was I always just a resource to be managed? He thought about that for a long time. Honestly, I always felt intimidated by you. You built a successful business, you paid for Sarah's education, you owned your house outright. I felt like I could never measure up. So you decided to tear me down instead of building yourself up. I guess I did, and I'm sorry for that. It was the first honest thing he'd said to me in years. Where are you moving to? Sarah's cousin has a duplex in Gresham. We can rent it month to month until we figure out something permanent. And work? I've got a job lined up with a firm downtown. It's not great money, but it's steady. Sarah's going back to work full-time at her law firm. What about the kids? They'll adjust. Kids are resilient. David, let me give you some advice. Stop looking for shortcuts. Stop thinking that other people's money is the solution to your problems. Build something of your own, even if it takes time, even if it's hard. He nodded. I think I understand that now. January 15th arrived cold and gray. Typical Portland winter weather. I pulled up to the house at noon with my own moving truck. Just a small one, since I wasn't bringing much. Just my personal belongings, Linda's photos, and my office equipment. The house was empty and clean. Sarah had left the keys on the kitchen counter with a note. Dad, we've moved out as requested. The house is clean and all utilities are still connected. I changed the locks and left you both sets of keys. I'm sorry for everything. I hope someday you can forgive us. Love, Sarah. I walked through the rooms slowly. It was a nice house, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, a modern kitchen, a small yard. I could understand why they'd wanted to keep it, but it had never really been theirs to begin with. The master bedroom would become my new bedroom. Sarah and David's old room would be my home office. The kids' rooms I'd leave as they were, in case Emma and Jake wanted to visit. That afternoon, as I was unpacking my books, the doorbell rang. It was Emma, standing on the porch with a small backpack. Hi, Grandpa. Emma, what are you doing here? Mom said I could come visit if it was okay with you. She's waiting in the car. I looked past Emma and saw Sarah sitting in her car at the curb. She waved hesitantly. Of course it's okay. Come in. Emma looked around the house that used to be her home. It looks different with your stuff here. Good different or bad different? Just different. Can I see my old room? We walked upstairs together. I'd left her room exactly as it was. Same bed, same desk, same posters on the walls. You didn't change anything. I thought you might want to stay over sometimes. If your parents say it's okay. Emma sat on her old bed and looked around. Grandpa, are you still mad at Mom and Dad? I sat in the chair by her desk. I'm not mad anymore, sweetheart. I'm just sad. Sad about what? Sad that they thought the only way to solve their problems was to get rid of me. Sad that they didn't trust me enough to ask for help instead of trying to trick me. Emma nodded thoughtfully. Mom cries a lot now. I'm sorry to hear that. She says she made a terrible mistake and doesn't know how to fix it. What do you think she should do? Apologize and mean it. Not just say sorry because she got caught. Emma was wise for 12 years old. And what do you think I should do? I think you should let her try to fix it, but not right away. She needs to think about what she did for a while first. We spent the afternoon setting up my computer and arranging my office. Emma helped me organize my files and showed me how to use some software features I'd been struggling with. Around 5 o'clock, Sarah knocked on the door. Hi, Dad. Sarah. How are you settling in? Fine. It's a nice house. We stood in the doorway awkwardly. This was the first time we'd been face to face since Christmas. Dad, I know I don't have the right to ask, but is there any chance we could talk sometime? Not about the house or the money, just talk. I looked at my daughter. She'd lost weight, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She looked older, tired. Maybe, I said, but not yet. She nodded. I understand. How are you adjusting to the new place? It's smaller, but we're managing. David's new job is going well. I'm working more hours. We're starting to get our finances straightened out. Good. Emma came to the door with her backpack. Thanks for letting me visit, Grandpa. Anytime, sweetheart. As they walked to the car, Sarah turned back. Dad, thank you for taking care of Emma today, and thank you for leaving her room the same. After they left, I made myself dinner and sat in the living room that used to be theirs but was now mine. It felt strange but not unpleasant. It felt like a new beginning. Over the next few months, I settled into my new routine. Emma visited every other weekend, and sometimes Jake came too. David started sending me monthly payments toward what they owed me. Not much, but consistent. Sarah sent birthday cards and holiday greetings, keeping her distance but staying in touch. In April, Mrs. Patterson called with surprising news. Robert, I just heard the most interesting thing. Do you know Patricia Morrison from the Oregonian? No, should I? She's a reporter, covers local interest stories. She heard about your situation somehow and wants to write an article about it. What kind of article? About elderly people standing up for themselves against family members who try to take advantage of them. Apparently, it's more common than people think. I thought about that. I'm not sure I want my family business in the newspaper. She said she'd change the names, keep it anonymous. She thinks it could help other people in similar situations. 3 weeks later, the article ran under the headline, When Family Financial Support Comes with Hidden Costs. It told the story of an elderly Portland man whose adult children tried to force him into a nursing home while taking over his property, and how he used legal and financial tools to protect himself. The article generated dozens of responses from readers sharing similar stories. Elderly parents who'd been pressured to sign over property. Grandparents who'd been cut off from grandchildren unless they provided financial support. Seniors who'd been made to feel like burdens in their own families. But it also generated one response I hadn't expected. Sarah called me on a Thursday evening in May. "Dad, I read the article. How did you know it was about us?" The details were pretty specific. "Dad, I had no idea how common this was. I had no idea that what we did to you was like what all these other families did." "What do you mean?" "I mean, I thought our situation was unique. I thought we were just trying to solve a specific problem in the best way we could. I didn't realize we were following a pattern that predatory adult children follow." "Predatory," I repeated. That's what one of the responses called it. Predatory adult children who manipulate elderly parents for financial gain while convincing themselves they're providing care. I could hear her crying. "Dad, I need you to know that reading those stories made me understand something. We weren't taking care of you. We were taking advantage of you, and I don't know how to live with that." "Sarah, no, let me finish. I've been telling myself for months that we made a mistake, that we meant well but handled it badly. But the truth is, we meant well for ourselves. We wanted your money and your house, and we convinced ourselves that what was good for us was good for you too." She was quiet for a moment. "I don't know if you can ever forgive me. I don't know if I can ever forgive myself. But I want you to know that I understand now what we took from you. We didn't just try to take your house. We tried to take your dignity, your independence, your right to make decisions about your own life." "Sarah, why are you telling me this?" "Because I love you. Because you deserved better from me. Because I want to be the daughter you raised me to be, even if it's too late." I sat in my kitchen, the kitchen that used to be theirs, and listened to my daughter cry. "It's not too late," I said finally. "What do you mean?" "I mean, it's not too late to be the person you want to be. It's not too late to have a relationship based on respect instead of money. It's not too late to be a family." "But the house, the money." "Sarah, I don't care about the money. I never did. I cared about being treated like a father instead of an ATM machine. I cared about being included in decisions about my own life. I cared about being valued for who I am, not what I can provide. I do value you. I do. Then show me. Not with apologies or promises, but with actions. Show me that you see me as your father, not as a resource to be managed." "How?" "Come visit me. Bring the kids. Let's have dinner together without talking about money or houses or who owes what to whom. Let's just be a family." Would you want that?" "Sarah, I never stopped wanting that. Even when I was angriest, even when I felt most betrayed, I never stopped wanting my daughter back." We made plans for Sunday dinner. Nothing fancy, just family time. And for the first time since Christmas morning, I felt hopeful about the future. When Sunday came, Sarah and David and the kids arrived right on time. We cooked together, ate together, and talked about normal things. Emma's soccer team, Jake's interest in guitar lessons, David's new job, Sarah's cases at work. Nobody mentioned money. Nobody mentioned the house. Nobody talked about nursing homes or financial obligations or who owed what to whom. We just talked like a family. After dinner, Emma helped me with the dishes while the adults sat on the porch and the kids played in the yard. "Grandpa," Emma said as she dried a plate, "are you happy living here?" "I am. Are you okay with me living in your old house?" "Yeah. It was never really our house anyway, was it?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, Mom and Dad couldn't afford it without your help, so it was always kind of your house. We were just borrowing it." "That's a very mature way to look at it." Emma shrugged. "I'm 12. I'm practically a teenager." As they were leaving, Sarah hugged me goodbye. "Thank you for giving us another chance. Thank you for taking it." 3 months later, David made the final payment on what they owed me. It had taken them nearly a year, but they'd paid back every penny. More importantly, they'd done it on their own, without asking for extensions or making excuses. That fall, I got a call from Emma. She was 13 now and starting 8th grade. "Grandpa, I need to ask you something for a school project." "What's that?" "I have to write about someone I admire and explain why. Can I write about you?" "Me? Why would you want to write about me?" "Because you taught me something important." "What's that?" "You taught me that people should be treated with respect no matter how old they are. And you taught me that standing up for yourself isn't mean. It's necessary." I thought about that conversation for a long time after we hung up, about the lessons we teach without meaning to, about the example we set by how we handle difficult situations. 2 years later, Sarah and David bought a house they could actually afford. They invited me to their housewarming party, and I went. It was smaller than the house I now lived in, but it was truly theirs. "Dad," Sarah said as she showed me around, "I want you to know something. This house feels different than the old one." "How so?" "This one feels like home because we earned it, because every payment comes from our own work, our own effort, because nobody can take it away from us because we took advantage of them." "I'm proud of you," I said, and meant it. "For what?" "For learning to stand on your own feet, for building something of your own, for becoming the independent adults I always knew you could be." That night, I drove home to my house, the house I'd bought for them, but now lived in myself. I sat in the living room and thought about the journey we'd all taken to get to this point. Sometimes the people we love have to learn the hard way that love doesn't give them the right to control us. Sometimes we have to fight for our own dignity, even when it hurts the people we care about. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give our children is refusing to enable their worst impulses. I pulled out my phone and called Emma, who was now 15 and doing well in high school. "Hi, Grandpa." "Hi, sweetheart. How was your day?" "Good. Mom and Dad said you came to the housewarming." "I did." "What did you think of the new house?" "I like it. It's smaller than our old place, but it feels more honest." "Honest?" "Yeah, like we actually belong there." Emma understood what it had taken her parents years to learn, that a home isn't just a place to live, it's a place you've earned the right to be. As I hung up the phone and got ready for bed, I thought about Linda and what she would have said about everything that had happened. I think she would have been proud of me for standing up for myself. But more than that, I think she would have been proud that our daughter eventually learned to be the person we'd raised her to be. The house was quiet as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, but it was a good quiet. The quiet of a man who'd fought for his dignity and won, who'd refused to be discarded by the people he loved, who'd taught his family that respect isn't something you take for granted. It was the quiet of someone who'd come home to himself, and in the end, that was the greatest victory of all. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who tried to take advantage of you? We'd love to hear your experiences. For more stories about family, justice, and standing up for yourself, click on the suggested videos.